The Myanmar miracle, or that is what's hoped for this country of almost 50 million people tucked between Asian powerhouses India and China. A country which just 3 years ago was being brutally led by one of the world's most repressive military regimes. For decades, Myanmar, which is also known as Burma, was best known for the heroic struggle of Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi, who spent more than 15 years under house arrest, separated from her husband and sons by her military jailers. But she kept up the struggle to reform her beleaguered country, and now her vision is becoming reality at a breathtaking pace. But if she is the icon of democracy, Myanmar calls this man the icon of reform, former general and now President Thein Sein. He's in the United States for meetings with President Obama today, and it's the first time a Burmese leader has visited the White House since 1966. And since then, the country has morphed from military junta to fledgling democracy, with political and economic reforms that were unimaginable just 3 short years ago. It's still very much a work in progress, though, as President Obama acknowledged in November when he became the first ever U.S. leader to visit Burma.
I don't think anybody's under any illusion that Burma's arrived, that they're where they need to be. On the other hand, if we waited to engage until they had achieved a perfect democracy, my suspicion is we'd be waiting an awful long time.
So with Burma charging towards change, economic liberalization, lifting press censorship, representative democracy, major problems still persist. There's endemic poverty, drug trafficking, corruption, and an explosion of brutal ethnic violence, specifically the targeting and massacre of the country's Muslim minority by its Buddhist majority. The group Physicians for Human Rights today accused the government and security forces of standing idly by and called for an independent investigation into the killings. In a moment, I will ask my exclusive guest, President Thein Sein, about all of this. Mr. President, welcome to the program. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be with you and with CNN.
You must be amazed at the speed with which relations with the United States are improving. I mean, it wasn't many years ago that you were enemy number one for the United States. This is incredible.
I have to agree. I myself am amazed at the speed of the improvement of our bilateral relations. But there are no permanent friends or permanent foes in international relations.
Yes, that's a famous saying. What is it that you hope to get out of this relationship? What is it you hope to get out of your visit with President Obama?
First of all, I hope that our bilateral relations between our two countries will improve because of this visit. And secondly, I think I'll be able to remove some of the obstacles and challenges that we now have when it comes to economic development.
What do you think the United States wants from you? We have heard that it's very important for the United States, and maybe for Myanmar, Burma as well, that you develop a stronger relationship with America than with China. Is there a competition for Myanmar between the United States and China?
I must say there's no competition between China and the United States. Our foreign policy is we maintain friendly relations with all countries around the world, and will continue to maintain our friendly relations with China, and at the same time we'll try to maintain and improve our relations with the United States.
Well, certainly China is quite worried, because even today I'm reading that they are conducting an unprecedented public relations operation inside Myanmar to convince the people of Myanmar that all their investments, in some cases their land grabs, in order to pursue their own economic interests, should be accepted by the people of Myanmar. Do the people of Myanmar trust China?
We share a long common border of nearly 2,000 kilometers with China, and we've been maintaining friendly relations with China since time immemorial. For as you know, during the 2 decades when there were various obstacles in our relationship with other countries, China was one of the friendly neighbors, and we were able to maintain friendly relations with China. I should say that China continues to be our friendly neighbor.
Let me go back to these incredible changes that are happening in your country. Will you agree and accept that for many, many years, decades, Myanmar was one of the most hated regimes? It was like North Korea for the West. Ruthless, it was brutal, cruel. And now it's changed, and I'm trying to figure out why, how, what was the turning point?
As you know, now in Myanmar, we have a democratically elected constitutional government as well as elected members of parliament. So it's the duty of the government to fulfill the will and the desire of the people. The reforms that we are instituting are the will of the majority of the people.
I'm sure you're right, the reforms are the will of the people. But for many, many years, the government, the junta, did not respond to that will of the people. So what changed you?
As one of the citizens of Myanmar myself, I'm trying my best to fulfill the will and the desire of the people.
Let me ask you about Aung San Suu Kyi. What is it like working with her? What was it like when you first met her?
As you know, for nearly 2 decades, Aung San Suu Kyi was in opposition to the government. But when I met with her, we tried to reach some common ground for the interest of the people and the country. So there is some common ground between us. At the same time, we have different views on some issues. But we were able to agree that we will leave those issues for later and solve our differences through negotiations.
I interviewed Aung San Suu Kyi several months ago when you were all here at the United Nations. This is what she told me.
I've never thought that what they did to me was personal anyway. It is politics. I like a lot of the generals. I'm rather inclined to liking people. I've always got on with people in the army. You mustn't forget that my father was the founder of the Burmese army, and this is why I have a soft spot for them, even though I don't like what they do. That's different from not liking them.
When she told me she had a soft spot for you and the generals who had kept her imprisoned for so many years, I was stunned. Were you surprised that she likes the military?
For me, I'm not surprised by her feelings towards our military, because Aung San Suu Kyi's father, General Aung San, was our national hero who fought for our independence. He's also the founder of our military, so I believe that she has a special place in her heart for the military.
She obviously respects what you've done. Do you respect her?
I should say that she has confidence in me and respect for me. Likewise, I have reciprocal feelings for her.
There has been, over the last more than a year, an explosion of communal violence, of Muslims, Rohingyas and others being killed. Hundreds of people have been killed, thousands of homes have been destroyed, and there are maybe 12 or more thousand people in refugee camps now. The government is criticized for not doing enough to stop this. Is that a fair criticism, and should you be doing more to stop this?
According to our government, we don't have a policy of discriminating based on religion or race. This communal violence started because of a criminal act, and this led to the communal violence. We're doing our utmost to contain the violence while ensuring the rule of law. Because of our efforts, peace and stability have been restored in this part of the country. We are also trying our best to provide necessary humanitarian assistance for the reconstruction and rehabilitation of the people in that area.
But you yourself, I read, you said that the police had not done enough to stop this violence.
I found that our police force didn't have the experience to handle these types of incidents, and they didn't have sufficient equipment to handle these types of incidents. Another thing is that there is not a sufficient police force in that region. There were some deficiencies in the police force at that time, and that's what I said.
President Obama says there's no excuse for violence against innocents. I'm sure this will be part of your discussions with him. Do you accept that these Muslims have a right to be in Myanmar, in Burma, and should have their rights and their livelihoods protected and safeguarded?
You are correct that all the citizens in our country must be able to enjoy their fundamental rights. At the same time, we must also safeguard their rights and the rights in accordance with our law.
Just ahead of this trip, you released another 20 political prisoners, and you've released hundreds since you've been president. There are still 160 or so more left. Again, this is bound to come up with your conversations with President Obama, and it's one of the reasons why some sanctions, US, are still on Myanmar. Will you release all the remaining political prisoners?
The concept of releasing political prisoners in our country is carried out because we want to ensure that the political process is inclusive, where all people of Myanmar can participate in the political process. Therefore, that is the main reason we are releasing political prisoners. We also have formed a committee for scrutinizing the remaining political prisoners, but some of the prisoners that we still detain are there because they've committed crimes such as murder or rape. But they will be released based on the recommendations of this committee.
But you do accept that there still remains political prisoners who need to be freed?
With regard to political prisoners, there has been a discrepancy in the list of prisoners, but as I said earlier, the Committee for Scrutinizing the Remaining Prisoners has been thoroughly studying the cases. If they're eligible, they will be released.
All of the reforms that you're doing, all of the economic reforms that you're doing, still the vast majority of the Burmese people, the people of Myanmar, live in poverty, live on less than $1 a day. Most of the people who are benefiting are the urban classes. How big a challenge is that to get all your country people to be able to have a better life?
You are correct. The people of Myanmar have not enjoyed equally in the economic development of our country. At present, the people of Myanmar have very few job opportunities. Therefore, our government is trying to attract foreign investment into our country. Then we will be able to create job opportunities for the people of Myanmar to generate income and raise the living standard and raise them out of poverty.
Everybody says corruption is a major problem in Myanmar. They say you are not corrupt, but many others are. Do you agree that it is a very big problem?
We have to estimate that Myanmar, like other countries, has her corruption problems. But our government is committed to having a clean, good government. So we're trying our best to reduce the corruption and eventually eradicate this problem of the corruption in our country. To eradicate corruption, we are trying 3 plans. The first is that we are trying economic development for the prosperity of the people in Myanmar. Secondly, we are taking action against those corrupt officials. Thirdly, we are trying to educate the people to be free from corruption.
One last question. The Human Rights Special Rapporteur, back in 1998, said that when you were military commander of the eastern state, there were orders to confiscate about 13 plots of land and rice field to increase the amount of land for the military base. What do you say about that?
I was serving as the commander of the Eastern Command in 1996, but during my time serving as the commander, there was never a problem of confiscating land. I've never taken land against the will of the people. There was no major issue of land grabbing in that area while I was serving as the commander. Some of the reports were fabricated. So I have to say that there were no major problems. Even today, there is no major problem of land grabbing in the eastern part of the country.
So you reject that. Do you finally feel relief taking off the military uniform and putting on the civilian suit of a New Democrat?
I served in the military for my country. Now I am serving as a civilian for my country. But you cannot compare that to when I was serving as the president. As president, I have more duties in the interest of our country. It is a heavy duty, a heavy responsibility to serve the people and the country.
Mr. President, thank you very much.
Thank you.